Welcome back. Or, no, welcome. Because, to be fair, I might not have posted in, like, years. I hope you can't hear anything, because I have, like, 3 different machines going, including the modem right there. So the thing is, this channel is supposed to be something that, like I said, unsure. I don't know, I just like doing things. So I really like talking, and I really like playing video games. I've been playing video games before. However, I just moved, and I don't have a computer. Nope. So I can't be playing video games, which sucks because that's the thing I really wanted to do that I moved out and was able to do, or should have been able to do, a lot more easily. However, it's Pride Month, and because of that, I want to talk about something because I really like just talking. And I do have exactly one thing with Pride. Hold on. I got it. It's a bandana. Okay. Now we're ready. I like the idea of just like talking or just ranting, but the thing is, I didn't really know how to go around it, and it seems like a lot of work. But I decided I really want to do it, so for this Pride Month, I'm going to try. For this first video of me just like talking, I wanted something that I'm really passionate about, but also something that I don't have to do a lot of work into. So like, rewatching a movie or something that I needed to look into or rewatch. It was too much. So instead, what I want to do is talk about something that I'm really passionate about, that I really love, and maybe has to do with, because it's Pride Month, I decided to do something LGBT as well. For those of you who do not know, I'm a trans guy, yay. So, I was gonna say obviously, but I don't want to be like, yeah, obviously. But I'm a trans guy, and I want to talk about something to has something kind of more. So I thought about different LGBT movies and TV shows that I really enjoy, but again, I didn't want something I have to research too heavily.
5 minutes later.
We're going to do some research. So I went to what I really, really love, which is The Golden Girls. And for those of you who do not know, The Golden Girls is a TV show from the, I think, early 80s to 90s, and then from there is also The Golden Palace, where the main actress for Dorothy didn't want to be in the show anymore, so she left and they made The Golden Palace. Now, The Golden Palace in and of itself is not bad. It only got, I think, 14 episodes. It didn't even get a full season, if I'm not mistaken. We're going to talk about the LGBT representation, and I'm going to talk about both The Golden Girls and The Golden Palace, but essentially I'm just going all in one. A lot of people know of one of the very first like gay episode, but it actually starts before that in The Golden Girls, talking about LGBT issues and people. There's a lot of times people just kind of don't mention that gay people exist. With the Golden Girls, they mention very quickly, in a very hypothetical, Rose brings up Dorothy adopting somebody. The adopted kid grows up and comes out and has a coming out party.
She could marry that man. They could have a child. They could adopt a child. And then one night at the country club, possibly during little Mei Ling's coming out party.
So to have a hypothetical gay character and talking about it in a not a negative light, it wasn't indicated to be rude or bad that this hypothetical kid was gay. And then we move on, and there's the very famous, I think probably one of the most famous LGBT episodes, which is Dorothy's friend. Dorothy's friend, hold on. We're going to do some research. And there's this character, Jean, who is Dorothy's friend in this episode, and she comes to town and she stays with them. And throughout this episode, you see or you learn that Jean is a lesbian who's married to Pat. who the other girls think is a man, because Dorothy very respectfully says, I don't want to, out you to my friends if you weren't okay with that.
I don't know quite how to phrase this.
The lesbian thing, do you keep it under your hat or what?
Ma, Jane, do you? I mean, what I mean is
I know what you mean. You didn't tell your roommates that Pat was a woman, did you?
Well, they just assumed that Pat was your husband, and I wanted to make sure it was okay with you before I told you.
This is extremely good. This is exactly how it's supposed to go. Do not out people to other people if you if you don't know, if you didn't explicitly say to do so.
Well, listen, Dorothy, I'm not embarrassed or ashamed of who I am. Hey, you know your friends better than I do. If you think they're the kind of people who can handle it, I'd prefer to tell them.
Dorothy was, in the right to be like, I didn't want to out you. It, I think, also tackles a very big issue that a lot of people do have, which kind of is still a thing, which is really weird to me. Because again, this is from, the 80s. Don't look at my hair. It's something that even to this day a lot of people talk about, but even through even through the 90s and the 2000s, it's this thing of, oh, I'm okay if you're gay, but just don't come on to me. Oh, it's okay if you're gay, just don't whatever with me. And I think it's really important to have this episode in this time period being like, yes, Jean might have feelings for Rose. But that doesn't mean she is this horrible person. She actively goes, okay, I am messing up. I feel bad. I'm going to just go because I know Rose is straight and is not into me. And that's what she does. Especially because Rose is the most innocent of the girls. Where she doesn't know what to do, and she didn't see it coming. Rose is a very naive character, and to have Jean be into her, that is this important kind of break in being like, just because a gay person likes you doesn't mean they're predatory, it doesn't mean they're evil, doesn't mean that anything's going to happen. It means they're into you just like you can be into someone else. Which is, by the way, is really interesting or funny how you look at things like Family Matters and you have the neighbor being in love with the girl. You look at Sister, you have the neighbor being in love with the girls. You have these characters being in love with these other characters. If they're straight, it's not played as predatory or even bad, and a lot of times at the end you're supposed to be rooting for them to finally get together. That's what it is. But if they're gay, suddenly that is wrong and inappropriate and they're predatory and blah blah. So to have Jean being, it's an important conversation to have had. And I think even to this day a lot of people have this issue where we are obviously, as a society, especially here in America, are better, hopefully, in the grand scheme of things, than the 80s. Even just a decade ago, less than a decade ago, where somebody I know that I grew up with, they said the same thing to a bisexual person. I think this episode was really important. And again, especially because this still happens to this day. I mean, this also can continue on to being, now a lot of these issues are getting moved on to trans people, especially trans women, and having these moments of, oh, it's okay if she's a trans woman, but I wouldn't want to be with her. It's okay, she's a trans woman, but she better not hit on me, kind of deal. And to have this loop happen again, it's like, okay. But I actually, when I was looking up Jean's name, I actually found, this is why you should do research before talking about things, but I didn't. I had a character who then got written out. It is a character who is played as their chef, who was a sassy gay character. And I think good and bad, where, you know, having an openly gay character is very, very important. I mean, usually, especially it started in like the 90s, a sassy best friend character was becoming a thing, where sassy gay best friend was the thing. So to have it already in the 80s would have been, I think, could have been good. I could also see it fumbling quite a bit if not done well. That being said, I also haven't watched the pilot in a very long time. So having that character, I don't know, obviously, the character, he didn't stick with me. I don't remember him as much as even a mentioned fake character who was gay. I remember one character who was the artist, and throughout it, they wanted to get this man's attention and, you know, wanted to flirt with him, wanted to be with him throughout this episode, until at the end he goes, I'm gay, kind of deal.
By any chance, is there anybody here tonight in whom you might be interested romantically?
Well, as a matter of fact, yes.
Oh. Laszlo, looks like we're hit.
Sorry, I thought you knew.
So I think, again, you know, mentioning a gay character, that's really important. Going back to things like that I grew up on, like The Nanny, which was a questionable choice in my life, but you know, I was a kid, but I grew up watching The Nanny, so to have these characters who they think are introduced as gay and then realize they're straight. This is the opposite of that. The Golden Girls has like a character who's introduced as straight and then comes out as gay. Even very quickly having Jean be introduced and then turn out, but then came out as a lesbian in the episode. This artist, whose apparently name is Laszlo, came out at the end of the episode. Having gay characters are really important. The big one is Clayton, Blanche's brother, who is introduced in Golden Girls. Clayton is really important to me because he's a recurring character, which I think is actually a really fun aspect, which some people might be like, oh, well, it's contradictory to have a second episode with the first episode. But I don't think so. So what I actually did before watching the Golden Girls, because I didn't know if I wanted to commit to watching it, I went and I actually looked up LGBT episodes and watched those episodes, or LGBT tied-in episodes, which is why I'm leaving one particular episode for very last, because it wasn't on the list. But we'll get there. Clayton gets introduced, and they're like, oh, you know, he's such a ladies' man, blah, blah.
Well, that usually means he met a stewardess he liked. Lunch, dinner.
Essentially, what happened is Clayton dips out of a date, and then Rose actually walks up and was like, Clayton, what are we doing? Like, you're in part 2 or whatever, I don't remember. And essentially, she's like, oh, I can figure it out.
What are you doing here? Blanche told me she was sending you out on a date.
Oh, she did.
Didn't it work out?
Well, let's just say Blanche has it in her head what type is right for me, and she's way off.
I'll bet I could sit here for a minute and tell you what your type is. I'm good at this.
And he checks out a guy. And she's like, oh, but that's not fair. You know, that guy's a guy. You're not.
Clayton, you're not playing fair. That's a man. That's a man and you're a man. You're both men.
And she kind of realizes, and she's like, oh, well, I think you should come out to Blanche. And I think she would still love you.
I know, Blanche. I mean, she'd be upset, but not for long. And just think how it would help you two in the long run.
It really kind of hits me because I came out to my siblings. One of them is a very loving sister of mine, and who is straight and who is cis, and who, even so, I knew she was very, very supportive of the LGBT community. You know, to have this person who doesn't been through something like this, it's really kind of be hard to being like, I don't know what will happen. And so when I came out to both my siblings, I was crying. Even though I knew they would not say anything harmful, but it's just so vulnerable. Anyways, so he comes out.
I'm saying I'm gay, Blanche.
And she's like, you know, and she needed a moment.
I know it can't be true. You're my brother.
It's true, Blanche.
But at the end of it, she's like, you know, I'm okay with this.
And I'd hate to think that this is going to keep us from being friends.
Well, honey, of course it isn't. Oh, no, I'll get used to this. I will.
At the end, you know, she's not quite there. Like, they make a joke about going to a particular, I think, restaurant or bar where guys wear particularly tight pants, and, you know, Clayton's like, hell yeah. And she's like, I'm not there.
Let's go to Jose. We always go there to celebrate.
The food is great.
Yeah, and they make all the waiters wear these really skin-tight bullfighters pants.
Really?
Let's go to Emilio's.
And it's really important to be like, okay, just because you are shocked or you didn't see it coming, it doesn't mean it's new to them. And I think that is something that is really important, where if someone's already coming out to you, this isn't a spur of a moment thing. They didn't just go, oh man, I'm gay, I better go tell everyone. It's realizing, oh, I'm gay, that they figured it out. They went through the whole process you're gonna go through, but for themselves. And kind of being like, okay, and then coming out. That's the very first episode, and it was kind of just being like, gay people exist, anyone can be gay, and just because it's uncomfortable for you doesn't mean they're wrong or it's wrong. And I think that's a very good first episode. And then he comes back, I think 2 seasons or so later, he announces that he's getting married. And Blanche is like, whoa. Like, being gay is one thing, but like, making it so everyone knows it, not hiding it, so public. And I think the thing is that this is actually something recurring with Blanche, which is why I brought up the Golden Palace, or one of the reasons, where something with the Golden Palace later, it doesn't matter, with another part of Blanche's family, where she's like, we're not ashamed of this, however, we don't tell people, we put it, essentially put it in the closet, and we pretend it doesn't exist.
In the South, it wasn't something you talked about. It was something you whispered about. So I guess I just got so used to not talking about it that I just never brought it up.
I think it's really important to be like, you are allowed to say that you're gay. You're allowed to express that you're gay. And obviously now, being from the 80s to even the 90s, in a time where legally, up until very recently, having gay sex or sexual relations was illegal. You could literally be arrested or get in legal trouble for being gay, for actively partaking in gay sex. And it's really such a shocking thing. And I remember how much throughout my own lifetime, you know, these things have changed. And as I came out partly before gay marriage was legalized. To have it be so many decades before, and to have Blanche being like, I want to be supportive of him, and I'm okay with him being gay. I just don't want him to tell the world.
Oh, look, I can accept the fact that he's gay, but why does he have to slip a ring on this guy's finger so the whole world will know?
And for them to be like, okay, why? And her race, like, why did you marry the person you love? And she's like, well, because I wanted to. I loved him.
Why did you marry George?
We loved each other. We wanted to make a lifetime commitment, wanted everybody to know.
That's what Doug and Clayton want, too. Everyone wants someone to grow old with, and shouldn't everyone have that chance?
Sophia, I think I see what you're getting at.
That having Clayton get married, and she realizes, oh, it's not for everyone else. It's just for you two. It is just for the two people getting married, because that's the only people that is important in this situation.
I have just one question for you.
Okay.
Do you love him?
I do, very much.
Well, good, because so do I.
It's true. The only people that are important are the two people getting married. It's huge. So she obviously decided, yes, this is a really important thing for Clayton, and I'm going to be supportive for him.
I still can't say I understand what you're doing, but I do intend to try to respect your decision to do it. I want you to be happy.
I am happy, Blanche.
I know.
That's great, and I think it really shows you that even if you are accepting in one shape or form, you can always grow to be better. And it's really important. And I think having, this character where in the 80s the characters are all, one or multiple of the main characters are wrong. So in sitcoms like this, the main characters learn their lesson. So to have our main character learn the lesson is good. And I think it's really good to have him be brought back and being like, this is really important and you have to relearn something. And that's good. And I absolutely love it. And I'm glad Clayton was able to get married and have this storyline. Even if a lot of people agreed or disagreed with it at the time, to have it highlighted and be like, this is good, and Blanche relearns or has to continue learning to break down her homophobia and realize, okay, this is okay, I have to fix this, blah blah. Really important. I also want to bring up not a gay character, but someone who repeatedly, there's quite a few, even so there's absolutely amazing gay representation in these episodes. There's also things like Dorothy's brother.
Although I did love borrowing his clothes.
Did you like wearing boys' clothes growing up?
No, but fortunately, neither did my brother Phil.
So throughout the episodes, I want to say it gets worse and worse and worse. And this isn't the first or only TV show that does this. I know quite a few TV shows that are like, wow, it used to be really good, and then it got bad. I think throughout the Golden Girls, they kind of have things like that as well, especially when it comes to Dorothy's brother. What is his name? Dorothy's brother, Phil. Sophia was like, oh, is he gay? It's like, no. It's like, okay.
How would you react if you were told that one of your kids was gay?
Your brother Phil is gay? I knew it.
Ma, Phil is not gay.
That he wore women's clothing because but he was still straight. Essentially, he just likes wearing women's clothing, having him be married with a wife and have, I think, like 5 or whatever amount of kids, and having it's like she's a welder, but he likes wearing women's clothing.
Well, the only time your brother's wife goes into the kitchen, it's to get a cold beer.
No, she has no time to cook. She works all day.
Welding. My son married a welder. Too bad she didn't weld his zipper shut. They got 10 kids they can't have.
The joke being that their relationship isn't the typical relationship or their typical roles in the relationship doesn't necessarily mean it was great. So at first it was like he just likes us, but at the end, Sophia is less and less okay with it. It does fall into spoilers, I guess. Spoilers. He dies, and he wants to get buried in a women's outfit, and I think he does.
He looks very peaceful and natural.
As natural as a man can look, wearing a black teddy.
Sophia is not happy about it. She's like, why would he? Can't he just wear a suit?
Why couldn't you bury him in a suit?
Because this is what he wanted.
And then realizes it's not about her.
Let go of the shame. So what if he was different? It's okay that you loved him.
I did love him. He was my son, my little boy.
What he would want to be buried in, and that is okay. But it does kind of, the jokes kind of, I think, get more offensive, in my opinion.
Veiled, shapely creatures. These are the guys from Phil's poker game. This is too funny. I have to get my camera from the car.
I think having the joke being a man in women's clothing 99.5% of the time isn't as funny as people think it was or think it is. But it's editing me, and I'm glad I looked exactly the same only 5 days later. When I was editing, I realized that I kind of really forgot that how many fat phobia jokes were tied in with Phil. Obviously, it also didn't really matter given the fact that this is about LGBT issues, but God, I forgot how many jokes wasn't just a man in a dress. It was about a fat man in a dress.
They say gay if a guy can sing the entire score of Gigi. But a 6'3", 200-pound married man with kids who likes to dress up like Dorothy Lamour, I think you have to go with queer.
The other thing is that I wanted to mention that Dorothy says that it's a deep psychological need that Phil had. But maybe he just liked wearing dresses. Maybe he just liked women's clothing. Like,
I don't know. I mean, he must have had some deep psychological need, and cross-dressing provided an emotional outlet.
I think that was supposed to be said in a good way. Like, oh, it's none of our business if that's what he likes, if that was what psychologically he needs. It's not great, in my opinion. And I did want to point that out. So anyways, he's not supposed to be gay, but he is part of this conversation, I believe, because again, oftentimes these kind of jokes is tied into like joking that, oh, is he gay, or joking about it, or at his funeral there was other people that dressed as women, so they're clearly part of our conversation here, even though they're not LGBT. I think it's important to recognize it. It's also important to recognize one very, very popular episode or talked about episode is the HIV episode. Rose had a blood, she needed a blood because I think of a surgery.
St. Luke's Hospital wants me to come in for some kind of test. That's where I had my gallbladder out 6 years ago.
And later they're like, oh my God, it could have been contaminated, go and get tested right away.
Seems you had a transfusion while you were there. The hospital thinks the blood may have contained HIV antibodies.
HIV? Wait a minute. You're talking about AIDS.
And she goes and gets tested, and she's like bothered, and she's obviously very stressed out by this.
I might have AIDS, and it scares the hell out of me.
And she's just like, why is it me? I have been really good. So she kind of goes like, I'm not a slut. I'm not a bad person. Why is this happening to me?
Damn it, why is this happening to me? I mean, this isn't supposed to happen to people like me. You must have gone to bed with hundreds of men.
Blanche is like, whoa, you have overstepped because you have said, I deserve it more than you do. Like, even not having HIVs, but even just being scared of having it, to have this potential.
Are you saying this should be me and not you?
No, I'm just saying that I am a good person.
You know, it's not for a bad person. Like, it's not a bad person's disease.
Hell, I'm a goody two-shoes.
AIDS is not a bad person's disease, Rose. It is not God punishing people for their sins.
Anyone can get HIV from so many different things. It is not essentially just targeting bad people, which a lot of people were saying, and some, I think, still kind of say this, where essentially, because it was, mainly killing gay people, we should have just let it. Obviously, that's not what Rose said, but it's kind of tied to it. And I grew up in a very religious situation. I grew up in a church where apparently, I didn't know this until I was a teenager, the pastor actively said that gay people were not allowed in his congregation. So I didn't come out when I was at church because I wasn't even allowed to. And I didn't know that, which, by the way, there was like 3 gay people in my circle of friends, like in my age group. So just wanting to point that out. You're not doing a very good job. I've heard things like this before where, it's deserved if this happened to gay people or this or that. It's not true. Just because someone's gay doesn't mean they deserve it being sick. The reason why Rose got to that point was because she was stressed out for potentially being sick.
I haven't?
Oh, but we'll have the results when you come back in 3 days.
Like 72 hours. Scared to death he's gonna tell me I have something that's gonna kill me.
Obviously, they couldn't have her actually have HIV. It wasn't even just that one episode, and a very particularly, I think, in my opinion, kind of a very funny scene. The Golden Girls, they were going on a cruise, I think, and they needed protection.
Going away for a romantic weekend to the Bahamas with Jeff and Rich and Randy. In this day and age, it might be a good idea to take along some protection.
AKA, they were gonna buy some condoms.
Condoms, Rose! Condoms!
And they're like, it's not a big deal. Everyone does it. No one's gonna think about it. We're gonna buy it. We're gonna be safe. Okay, we're gonna do this. And I'm like, y'all are not using condoms? No wonder Blanche thought she was pregnant. Anyways, use condoms.
Well, it's not a bad idea, but I'm a little embarrassed.
Oh, me too.
Embarrassed? Well, there's no reason to be embarrassed. It's a private matter. Whatever we buy is nobody's business but our own.
So they each grab one, and they go, and each and every one of them gets, the guy on the little speaker says, we need a price check on these condoms, and these condoms, and these condoms.
Joe, I need a price check on some condoms. These 3 ladies here want a couple of boxes of the King George prophylactics.
And I've seen this joke quite a few times, but I think it's kind of funny. I think it's important that they have the segment of being like, even so they are cis, straight women, they can still get these if they're planning to sleep with someone, get condoms. And I think that's really important. I think the joke didn't hinder the message. Sometimes jokes like that can make people not want to buy condoms or whatever, but I think this was still okay. I think it was just kind of breaking the ice of mentioning something that you don't really mention. The last gay character that I want to bring up, Gil Kessler. His name is not right there, if you're wondering. It is. So Gil Kessler is a politician in a particular episode, and I saved this one for last because I absolutely adore Gil Kessler. He is actually, I think, a very funny character. So throughout the episode, sadly, it's not my favorite episode of all times. It was like, yeah, okay. But because of the ending, I instantly made my siblings, well, I instantly wanted to make my siblings to watch it with me. But they didn't for like 3 weeks of me being like, what if we just watch this? And they're like, I don't want to watch the Golden Girls, it's not really my thing. And I'm like, I know, but what if we do it anyways? And they're like, no. And I'm like, please? And they're like, no. And I'm like, until finally they did. And they mentioned it, and they think it's actually funny. Actually, throughout the episode, you get to meet this politician, Gil, and he's so boring. He is so boring. There's just nothing to him. He's like awkward, and there's just nothing to him.
So what? He's a wimp, Dorothy.
For your information, Gil Kessler is a very bright man, an honest and devoted civic leader, and probably the biggest wimp I've ever known in my life.
Then suddenly he got popular because people thought he slept with Blanche and was cheating on his wife.
Nobody ever listens to me. They never have. I'm a wimp, just like you said. At least I was until today. Blanche, when the newspaper printed that story about my having an affair, people stopped thinking I was a wimp and they've started listening to me. I couldn't tell them it was a mistake.
Throughout the episode, Sophia's like, he has a secret. He has a secret.
Look at this picture of Kessler, Dorothy. There's a secret behind those eyes. Trust my hunch on this one, I'm never wrong.
This whole episode is wrapped around, the whole moral of the story is focusing actually on Blanche in the situation, because this is an anti-being rude to sluts episode. This happens quite a few times where they're like, you're a slut, we don't believe you, you slept with a married man, how dare you?
It's a married man running for election. Why would he say he had an affair if he hadn't?
Can you give me one good reason why I would lie to you?
You're embarrassed because you seduced him. You're scared and you're guilty because you ruined his campaign.
And she's like, I didn't do that.
You are assuming that I'm guilty because of my past. Well, that is not fair. Listen, girls, I'm in trouble here now. This isn't funny anymore.
You're right. This is not funny. It is sad.
Very close to the end of the episode, where he's saying, Blanche told me, she said, I don't want to vote for you unless you're an honest man. We need honest men in politics. And I thought you were one, but you're not.
You're an honest man. That's why we all believed in you. But now you started lying, and you're just like so many other politicians. Dishonest. If you even win this election, it won't mean a hill of beans, because it won't be you winning. You'll never be a great man, Gil, without being an honest man.
And Gil's like, you're right. If I'm going to win, I want to win based on honesty.
I don't want to be your city councilman unless I can win this job honestly.
At the end, Gil's like, I lied. I didn't have to sleep with Blanche. I just like that people were talking about my campaign because I was losing. And then after people thought I cheated on my wife, people actually started voting for me.
Blanche Devereaux and I never had an affair. I only said that to improve my image.
But there is one sentence at the very end in front of the whole party and said, I transitioned in, I think it was 69. I transitioned from, female to male.
In 1968, I had an operation. Until that time, I lived life as part-time stenographer and mild-mannered housewife, Anna Maria Bonaducci.
Gil is one of my favorite trans men characters out there. I absolutely love the character of Gil. I absolutely love that he's the most boring man alive, but he is transgender. It was revealed that he was trans. Everyone's shocked.
I can't believe it.
It really, I don't know. It's really, he was such a great character. Anyways, at the end, Sophia goes, I knew he had a secret. And you're like, oh my god, she realized he was trans.
What do you say about my hunches now, Dorothy? 5 more minutes, I would have had it.
Mom, how could you know? No one knew.
The joke is that the secret wasn't him being trans. The secret was that he was Italian.
Please, look at his nose. Of course he's Italian.
Obviously, the girls make up for being like, oh, I'm sorry, we thought you were a slut. Oops, we should have believed you. Because again, that's what the episode's about.
Can we have a hug and forget this ever happened?
You bet we can. Come here, you two.
And that was it. Essentially, that was it. He's trans, and that's okay. And there was nothing more to it. Then they get home and they sit on the couch. I think it's Rose and Dorothy. Rose like, does it function?
And what about the parts they put on? Do they test them first? So they work?
And Dorothy's like, well, I assume so.
I assume so, yes.
And I I think this is a very funny but very obviously not very knowledgeable way of talking about it, because again, it was all one surgery, blah blah blah. That's not how it works. Even so, I looked up before watching, so this was during my watch through, my very first watch through of all of the Golden Girls. I have watched the HIV episode, I watched the both episodes with Blanche's brother, Clayton, and I watched the Jean episode. That's what I was told was all of the gay episodes. Maybe I watched the art one, I can't remember. It was so shocking. It was really, really late at night, like really late at night. And I decided I was going to rewatch the episode right then because I didn't see it coming. On this list of LGBT characters, they didn't put Gil. And I'm like, very clearly, he is a transgender man. He was just not written on this list. And I'm so glad because it wasn't a bad episode. It wasn't or badly done. And the episode was okay. And again, it wasn't like, yes, love this episode. Because of him being trans, this episode is a lot more sentimental to my heart. I absolutely love it. And I'm so glad that I didn't know the twist because my face just dropped to not have this information. I was just so shocked when the twist happened. So I instantly had to get my siblings to watch it, and finally I got them to watch it, and I was like, so at the end of the episode, I was like, Gil, and my sister was just like, yeah, and I was like, in 87? He is, by the way, Gil, when I looked him up, is the oldest trans man character in, like, media, in TV shows. I couldn't find from an earlier time than Gil. The next one that I know of trans men was, I think, in 2007. 20 years later was the next trans guy character that I know of, that I have seen. That's major. That's huge. Anyways, my sister later was like, when we were talking and I pointed out like in 87, she kind of was like, yeah, at first I kind of just didn't think about it. I didn't think it was a big deal. It didn't occur to me that it was something important until I thought about it. Gil is such an amazing character to me because I find him very funny, that he's so boring. He's just such an amazing character, and I absolutely love. He's such an early example of especially trans men in media, but canonly trans characters in media in general, where I was bringing it up to my aunt because my aunt gave me the Golden Girls on DVD. And I was like, did you know there's a trans man in the Golden Girls? And she was like, what do you mean? And I was like, there's a trans man in the Golden Girls. And she was like, really? And I was like, yeah. She goes, I watched every single episode. And I was like, well, there is. And she just didn't remember. Just amazing. This whole thing I have made solely to talk about Gil because even so this was a cis actor, to have him, this character, represent me, to have a trans character on TV is such a huge thing, and to have it be something from, 87, to have this character be like, be represented, is really important. And I think it kind of goes to show you that representation is really important. So is it perfect? No, but the misinformation in it wasn't a bad thing. So just because they said a surgery, that doesn't necessarily make that representation a bad representation. And I'd rather have someone being like, oh, when did you get the surgery, and not fully understand, than someone who's actively hateful to me for being trans. Because even so, yes, here I am doing this, but not through this. Through my personal account on social media, I posted a photo of myself the other day, and someone replied with very hateful comment. I didn't know them. they don't know me, and they still thought it was okay to comment something very, very vile. And this wasn't the very first comment. It was very boring. I heard it before, but it wasn't the first comment like this I've seen. So to have such hate still be a thing, I think it's really important to be able to look at the Golden Girls and be like, wow, if their question, if Rose and Island question to me is, does it function, and not, oh, but you're actually a girl, it's a huge thing. So I can literally look at the Golden Girls and be like, in this universe, these characters do not have prejudice against me. I think it's really, really sweet to have this. You know, they don't use the word transgender, but it's very obvious that the character is transgender. At least what the term we would use now. Back in 69, he might have used a different term. The character, obviously, again, doesn't actually exist. He never existed. So we don't know what he would have said in 69. But the point is that to have characters that you can look at yourself and be like, that is me, is so important. I don't even know how to end it, because I almost forget that he's real. So every time I bring up Gil Kessler, I almost have to think to myself, am I making this character up? Because it's such a thing that it's so unbelievable that I think it's fake. And so every time I bring it up, I'm like, this actually happened, right? Because I forget. It's so unbelievable. I'm so glad that the Golden Girls had taken the opportunity to make a trans character, and to make it, in my opinion, a pretty good trans character is huge. And I am, on the basis of that, I am accepting of the other things. Pause, roll back. Trans people, and then trans people in the Golden Palace. I don't know how much overlap, like the writing staff, how much changed when it got changed into the Golden Palace versus the Golden Girls. Gil versus later on with the joke with the radio hosts and with Blanche.
Say hello to our listeners.
Hello.
As a transvestite, do you find that it's harder running a business here in conservative Miami?
I beg your pardon, Bill. I am not a transvestite.
I'm sorry, transsexual. I always get you guys mixed up.
It really highlights, it really shows that the difference between how they handled Gil Kessler and later on with the radio hosts.
Tell us about the operation then, Blanche. Yeah. You know, they say sometimes when a man has to have his leg amputated, he can still feel the leg. Yeah, they want to wiggle her toes, you know. Did you ever want to wiggle your toe, Blanche? Or do you keep your toe in a jar?
And having them joke about her being trans, that joke was so inappropriate and so bad.
I am a woman. I've always been a woman.
Well, for a guest, Mr. Blanche Devereaux.
Even so, they psych at the end of it, it's still not good.
How about you, sir?
I am a woman, damn it.
Prove it.
Well, fine. How about starting off with dinner?
Fine, I'm right behind you. Can't believe how this transvestite bit works every time.
I can't believe how this dinner and I'll prove it to you bit works every time.
So to have Gil being what I consider one of my favorites, to having the Golden Palace, it's just heartbreaking to me. I feel like it really sucked. I really wish I never seen it. I really wish it just didn't happen. I'd much rather it just not be a thing. I just wish it didn't exist. In the Golden Palace, it wasn't a great joke about trans women in that situation, and that episode wasn't great. I didn't like that episode, but that joke wasn't great. It really sucks, because we came from somewhere that is so progressive and so amazing that I don't believe it even. I forget that it even exists. Like, I not forget that my brain wants to be like, you made that up, because it's so unbelievable. Versus in the Golden Palace with those jokes, and it's so sad. I will take both of them, I guess, but I wish one didn't exist and we could keep just having Gil, because why is my hair so bad? We'll see how this turns out. Happy Pride. So ignore that this is all very plain. Okay, I'm going to put things up. I just moved. This wasn't even, this couch isn't even supposed to be in here. It just doesn't fit back out the door, okay? What am I supposed to do with the couch and where computer?